Hi all, I am back. Investigative Self-Esteem is back. I was a bit sick for weeks, so my second season that has been very slow has slowed down even more, but it continues. And I'm continuing the theme of that importance, the benefits, and also an invitation to just smash things, just to freaking smash things. And my first episode talked about the benefits of smashing your own self-image and admitting that, holy shit, how I was seeing myself before, it has changed, or like the things I would say, or the things, like it's okay to see them as being outdated and not to, sort of stand by them just because you would say something and just because you would see yourself in a certain way. So in my previous episode, I talked all about my privileges and just this pile of privileges that took me a long time to understand, and that would change obviously the light in which I would see myself. And today I have another topic that's like, it's embarrassing, but also it's fun in how embarrassing it can be. And that is a desire, the benefits, and an invitation to smash, not the people, but the ideas of maybe certain people that we would admire. Like, not to be afraid of to look back and say, my goodness, some people who used to be influential in my life, some people who I would, see in a certain light, I'm not seeing them in that light anymore. And just because I used to praise someone, I actually still don't owe my loyalty to them, and I can change my mind. And I have two examples for you, and one's really bad. Like I say to my friends sometimes, but it's time to admit that. So one I have is it's a horrible example of who I used to praise, thankfully for a short amount of time, but still, I'm like, I used to do that. And the second example is less bad, but it's also a fall from a pedestal that was very high up there for me. So let me give you those two examples from my life. So some years ago, for some months, thankfully not years, I used to like Jordan Peterson. And just to say that, I'm like, okay, this is official, people will know. So, I discovered him through some podcasts. I'm like, oh, okay, in terms of like personal development and, it's just that side really. I was like, oh, who is this man? He speaks in an interesting way. And like, look at him. And, I was like, oh, this is like a new fascination that I have. And I think I read at that point already, I just quickly read one of his books. And I remember to this day, that was like years ago, I was talking to my housemate at the time, shout out to Omar, and I was like, oh, this man, do you know Jordan Peterson? He's like, yeah. It's like, okay, yeah, he's kind of cool, isn't it? And that housemate of mine, who's like one of the most progressive people actually I know, he's like, so do you like him? I'm like, oh yeah, the personal development things, kind of like stoicism and that. He's like, oh, okay. I'm like, what? It's like, no, just, see when you know more about him, if you still like him. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm coming. And that comment coming from someone who I really admire, right, and who I really like, I'm like, okay, I'll keep it in mind. And then my goodness, the realization that he is a hurt man, yes, but also very hateful man. A very hateful man. What he just like, extreme right kind of, like trashing minorities. Also having this, as a psychologist, being a proponent of like letting your kids cry themselves to sleep. Just like not addressing the basic needs of your child, which we know from people who actually are not hateful and professionals in their fields, like Gabor Mate, is like, no, like you're sending a very horrible message to your child of like, my needs don't matter and no one's going to be here for me. So just like from a professional psychologist point of view, I'm like, oh my God, like his ideas are so detrimental to the society, like a whole generation of kids. And then just being a hateful man who trashes minorities. And the last, and already like I obviously wasn't admiring him like a year and a bit ago, but then when there is what was then the beginning of a genocide, and when you, a physician, a public intellectual, right, this man who like cries about certain subjects and, like has this, some kind of a love for humanity, he claims, and then he tweets I believe he tweeted at Netanyahu or just about Gaza in general, a man who works with children is somehow respected. When he tweets, give them hell. at the beginning of a genocide, what else do you need? What else do you need to know? Right? So for me, that like, ooh, Jordan Peterson, to like, holy fucking shit, like, this is so bad. So, it was a journey. It wasn't a long journey, but it's very embarrassing that I was like, oh, this man, and look at his ideas. And at the same time, yes, I held those views until I had new information and allowed information to affect how I see this person and be like, oh, no, no, no. So on one hand, it's like, it's embarrassing in retrospective. At the same time, you know what's more embarrassing? Not to allow that new information affect you, which is a definition of close-mindedness when you think about it, right? So I was like, oh, that's kind of embarrassing. But at the same time, yes, allow yourself to change your mind. And then the second person, and this is it's like a longer love story, but a very short end to that story. So in this very project and in my life, I would not shut up for some years about Brene Brown, and her research and her books and everything. And I discovered her, I think it was 2017 or 18. And, like read her books, everything for some years, for like 2-3 years. Was a big fan. And honestly, I'm still a fan of her research, on leadership at the heart, courage versus, vulnerability, and then all the shame research that has changed my life, right? Like her ground research on shame and like what shame does to you and how shame makes you all closed off and what do you do. Like these ideas, these concepts, these frameworks, they have really created a lot of value in my life. So I'm still very grateful to the whole body of work that Brene Brown has done. It has been an influence in my life, and that influence is positive. I couldn't undo it, and I wouldn't want to undo it. And at the same time, there were 2 instances also, and once again, the genocide in Gaza it has shed so much light on so much and so many. And I hope that it has done that for you too. But so for me, it's such a bright light. There are obviously other influences, how you change your mind about people, but this has been just like, woo, this really bright light that was being just like almost like targeted, like targeting some people who I like. I'm like, oh my goodness, okay, this is what that light has revealed. And so 2 instances. One was at the beginning of the genocide, and Daniel Mate, Gabor's son, has done an amazing, I think it was like a 20-30 minute deconstruction of a post that Brene Brown has made about Gaza. It was just this white feminist, like both siding, like clearly not knowing what's happening, clearly not having put any time and effort into trying to understand, like, oh, military occupation, colonization, what's that? Is there power imbalance? So there's a post that she made, and then Daniel Mate deconstructed so nice. I'm gonna link it somewhere here. I'm just like, this is brilliant. So already it was like, oh, this is feels like forced statement on what's happening, and it's very much not great. But for someone who's like injustice and like social justice, I'm a social worker, that was a horrible post actually. With a woman who's educated with resources, that was a horrible post. That was a shameful post. I was like, oh. And then and I filmed it on the video because it was just so enraging. It was so enraging, and I'm like, my God, like what is this, freaking parallel universe? There was a video, because yes, Brene Brown does a lot of research on and teaches also like, leadership and like this like new leadership with vulnerability, leadership with the heart, it's all cool. And I filmed the video on my other project, The Exploding Head, because my head was freaking exploding, which is like, what the fuck am I seeing? And it was an interview. Oof, and the blood is boiling again. So Brene Brown invited, some months ago, right? That was before the presidential election, Kamala Harris on her podcast, on her show. I don't know. Actually, I don't know what the circumstances were. And, it's a and it's like, oh, and like female leaders, this and this, cool. And she invited Kamala, and there was a clip from it where Kamala talks about her childhood, how what she used to do as a child. And then Brene Brown kind of relates to that. And they talk about their childhoods and, the joy of children, and they smile and they laugh and they're having a great time. When she's talking to, yes, a female leader who's been actively supporting the mass killing, the mass murder of children unseen in this century. And she's sitting down with this female leader, and they talk and they laugh, and it's a great conversation with zero, I'm guessing, uncomfortable questions. And I was like, mic drop here. That is it. That is it. If this is who you choose to interview, and this is what you choose to disregard, you're inviting, a high-rank person in the U.S. administration that all belongs in The Hague. You are talking to a war criminal. That is not an exaggeration. Holy fucking shit. So it's like, that cannot be unseen, that cannot be undone, that cannot be, that's in my mind now, right? That's gonna live in my mind. And once again, doesn't undo the importance of her research, and it's still important. And like, really, I cannot be like, fuck everything. Like, no, like it has created a lot of value in my life. But it is time, right, with this new information, to put that person down. And in half of my blog, and like, there was a time, it's like every other article, I'm like, I'm recommending this resources, like Brene Brown. And it's still there. It's still my, if you go to investigative sophism, if you search for Brene Brown, like, you'll see it. You'll see the quotes, everything. And at the time, they made sense, and like, it's not the most horrible thing to be, it's not the most horrible person to be quoting or anything. But I'm like, oh, things have changed with the new information. So I don't want to say, like, if I can do it, you can do it. Yeah, of course you can do it. But there is a certain freedom if you admit to yourself that I don't need to keep on praising certain people. I don't owe them my loyalty. Just because I was praising them, I don't have to continue. Like, I don't need to continue that, right? So it's a simple thing. It does require a bit of a, honesty with yourself, a bit of maybe a sense of humor, like, holy shit, okay, now it's different. A little bit of self-compassion as well, I would say, because it would be very difficult to. It's hard to be hard on yourself, right? But I'm inviting you also, not just because it's a new year. It's because I'm releasing this episode very late, that's why. No, but to think about, like, are there any people that have been maybe a strong influence in your life for whatever reasons that were probably very valid at the time? And then when you realize that, oh, actually, no. Or because you realize what the political views of the person, are, or anything else. And just to say, I can release that. There are other influences in my life. There are other people who I admire. There are other people who have been, just like lighthouses and just like people with, a moral compass that has not been shaken, that has not been proven to be somehow broken by what's happening in the world. And there are always plenty of people, if you want, like, who do I admire now? Who do I want to follow? Who's work I want to follow? Like, plenty of people. So I'm inviting you not to show that loyalty. I'm inviting you to kind of think of, just like we kind of filter people in our lives anyway, like with whom we want to spend time, right? Like, who do we allow into our heads? Who do we see as more moral leaders, I would say? And not just that, right? It can be an influence in a different way. And just not to have that, like, you don't need to defend anyone. You don't need to freaking defend anyone anymore if it's not, if they don't match your, values or principles. So for me, these are my admissions of like, oh, this is how I used to be. And, and things are very different now. And it's liberating. I've said it now, it's on camera, that I used to like Jordan Peterson for some time, right? It's like, oh, but it's, like, that's it. I can really let go of it. I can release it. So that's what I'm inviting you to do as well, just to smash that imaginary loyalty, rethink who you want to have in your life. Sometimes in person, right? But like in your head as well, because we really need to protect it, right? Our heads. Not everyone should be a VIP there, right? So that's what I'm inviting you to do today or any day. And hey, it is a new year, so maybe that can be part of your reflection. So thank you for listening. I'll see you soon, and thank you so much.